Hello and welcome. I have a BHAG. Now don't panic, it's nothing bad, I promise. A BHAG, if you're not familiar with the term, is a Big Hairy Audacious Goal. By way of explanation, I've been attending a discernment group, class, whatever you want to call it, at church recently, and one of the things that I came up with is related to cycling, which, is not a big surprise if you've seen at least one of my other videos. Before my reveal of my B.H.A.G, though, I want to recap how I got to where I am in terms of cycling. In case you haven't heard, I did not cycle my entire life. No, I got back into cycling in 2017. I was inspired to do so when my sister completed her first triathlon. So I got out an old 10-speed I had and haven't looked back since. From the onset of my cycling interest, I have felt this compelling need to reach out and help. And my guiding principle is to he to whom much is given, much is expected. So what I've been doing all along is buying bikes, usually fairly inexpensive ones to be honest, and servicing them, cleaning them up, and donating them to charity for people who have no other means of transportation. There's been a few heartwarming stories, and we need not get into that right now, but two of my more memorable builds were a 1975-ish Western Auto Western Flyer 10-speed. I picked that up fairly cheap, got it going, and gave it to an older gentleman who had no car and couldn't afford taxis and whatnot. And I don't think I've ever seen somebody so happy to get something. Another one that I recently completed is a 1982 Peugeot. And I had been contacted by the original owner, and it was nice knowing the history of this bike. It was a fun bike to fix up, and it's going to go to a good home, I'm sure. And in fact, this bike that you see behind me, that's my neighbor's 1986 Colnago Victory racing bike. He used to do amateur racing until the kids came along, and then the bike sat in the barn for 20-30 years. He asked me to fix it back up for him. And that will become relevant shortly. So, by watching a lot of YouTube videos and reading a lot of books on bicycle repair, and honestly making a ton of mistakes, I mean mistakes galore, I learned how to work on bikes, and I enjoy doing that. I picked up a penchant for working with my hands, particularly on machinery, from my late father. So that's a nice inheritance, that talent and interest. This is Selena, one of my helpers. Where was I? And for my own bicycle collection, I've got my 1999 Specialized Hard Rock, which is what you might call a resto mod, in that I updated the drivetrain but kept the frame and the suspension, by which I mean none. It's a rigid. I had a 2017, I believe it was, Diamondback Response hardtail. I took that down to a bare frame, repainted it, fixed it up, and rode that for a little while, and then gave it to my pastor, and she's having fun with it. And then a couple of years ago, starting with a bare frame that I bought on Amazon, I built a retirement bike for my then upcoming retirement. It was a road bike with drop handlebars, and it came out pretty well. I can't leave anything alone. And this past summer, I took that and I converted it to a flat bar gravel bike. So there you go, always tinkering. What else? Well, let's see. There's the Nishiki Maricopa road bike. I've replaced the wheels and tires and the saddle and the rear cassette on that. Then there's the recently acquired Nishiki Colorado Comp. That's a 2019 hardtail. I put a dropper post on it and I upgraded the cockpit to 800mm wide bars and a 45mm stem. That is a wicked fun bike, let me tell you. Perhaps one of my favorite builds was my old Mongoose Xr Pro. I got that from Walmart.com and I upgraded the living daylights out of it, rode it, had fun with it for a couple of years, and then I gave it to my friend. And she's been enjoying it ever since, and it's really nice to be able to pass things along. Which kind of ties into my B.H.A.G. I bet you thought I forgot about the B.H.A.G. Well, here's the thing. I told you about all these bikes not to brag about my stable, but to show you that I do know how to work on bikes, and I have acquired that knowledge through various means. And my friend who brought me this bike to fix up the Colnago, he said, "Look, Jim, I'd be happy to pay you for your time." Well, he's my friend and my neighbor. I'm not going to charge him. So I said to him, "Hey, no problem. You just pay for the parts and we're good." And then my pastor asked me if I would be willing to take a look at her husband's bike. It's a really nice late 80s, I think, Bridgestone MB6, and those were a premium bike back in the day, and it still shows its quality after all this time. Well, I'm certainly not going to charge my pastor, even though she offered to pay as well. I made her the same deal. Pay for the parts and we're good. So that got me thinking for my B.H.A.G. What if I start a side hustle, not necessarily restoring bikes, because that is very involved, although I've done it, but servicing and refurbishing bikes for people so they can get them back on the road again, or the trail as the case may be, because we all know right now new bikes are hard to come by. So if you've got a nice bike sitting in the basement, why let it go to waste? Get that puppy back out and into circulation. And I can see the ad now. Is Uncle Fred's bike just wasting away in the shed? Bring it into Jim. For a reasonable fee, he'll get you back riding again. Smiles guaranteed. So there you go. There's my cycling B.H.A.G, my big, hairy, audacious goal. And I can't help but wonder, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? If you don't have one, take some time, do a little cogitating, and come up with one. It's fun, trust me. I've had a great time just planning this out in my head. Now, if you enjoyed this, as I said earlier, there is a playlist linked below left, for all the bikes that I mentioned here, except for the Colnago and the Bridgestone, since those are not mine. And there's a link below right for another video that I'm pretty sure you will enjoy. Please leave me a thumbs up, it does help the channel. And as always, thank you for watching. Seriously, I appreciate that. Goodbye and have a great day.